Teaching Examples Using Gardner's 8 Intelligences, July 2nd, 2013, by Melanie Opheim for SEDF 333. I'm going to give a brief description of each intelligence, followed by an example for how you may incorporate that intelligence into the 4 main content areas of science, math, ELA, and social studies. These ideas are not all-inclusive and are just meant to give you an idea for how you could incorporate these into your own class. Start with the very first one here being linguistic. Linguistic is being able to use and manipulate words, both oral and written, effectively, which basically translates to these people are very good at reading and writing. Some examples of linguists are poets or writers. As far as how you'd use it in science would be articles or poems. I have right next to it here an article called The Big Bloom, which I got off of National Geographic. ELA, you can use like Scrabble, spelling words, or wordplay games. Social studies, you could do social studies journals where they're actually writing as far as doing mind maps or answering questions. This is another example where they'd be answering questions on the left-hand side about the Boston Tea Party, and then they actually did an activity that incorporated a different intelligence on the right-hand page. Math, you could do word problems or math literature. Circumference and All the King's Tens. A Math Adventure is a very good book about math placement, so that's another way to help the linguistic kids get the same information. The next intelligence is logical mathematical, which is having a good understanding of mathematics and logical thinking. Right now, the school curriculum closely matches this intelligence. Examples would be mathematicians, scientists, or statisticians. For science, you could incorporate it using classification or categorization games, creating and testing hypotheses. ELA, you could write poems or do a cause and effect models. Math, patterns, rules, theorems, Sudoku, magic squares. Pretty much these people like math, so you can't really go wrong in the math category. Social studies, class timeline. This is something that incorporates a couple different things for the logical mathematical, especially the cause and effect. This is an example of one that I did for a class, 6th grade class here. So that's something that you could do for the logical mathematical. Okay, the next intelligence is spatial, which is being able to represent information in one's mind using mental images. They excel at art. Some examples would be artist, architect, designers, pottery maker, sailor, or landscape artist. For science, you could use a science notebook or like art type activities, which this is one of the art type activities where we created the parts of a wave using pull and peel Twizzlers, and then we labeled it so that way they had a mental image. This is an example of a science notebook here where you have the actual writing and pictures and everything that would go in with it describing the experiment. ELA, you could draw a scene from a book or use mind maps. Math, you could use manipulatives, foldables, or die-cut shapes for teaching area. This would be the die-cut shape for teaching area. You just, you buy like a paper shape and put it on a square grid and have the student trace the outline. And that way it gives them a mental image for what area really represents. Those are just some basic examples of manipulatives, or base 10 blocks too. This is an example of a foldable here, which would be a vocabulary notebook, which I've seen used in math quite a bit for maybe memorizing different quadrilaterals or something like that. And social studies which is teaching vocabulary using verbal visual word association. This is a strategy that uses writing what the actual word is, drawing a picture of it, writing the definition, and then drawing or writing something that helps you relate it to yourself. So it actually has 4 really good areas for using for spatial learners. Okay. The next intelligence is bodily kinesthetic, which is pretty much mastering all aspects of one's body. They learn best through body movement. Some examples would be mimes, dancers, actors, athletes, or surgeons. Science, using any sort of hands-on science experiments, really going to get to this intelligence here. ELA, you could do reader's theater or clapping spelling words. I put an example there, hip, where for clapping the spelling word, you would clap above your head for the H because it's tall. For the I, which is in the middle, you would clap right by your stomach. And the P, which goes below the line, you'd clap down close to your feet. That way it helps you remember your spelling words. Then math, you can build geometric shapes to help them get a better idea. I did mine here with blueberries. Some younger students might not be able to use blueberries, so you can use the traditional marshmallow or gumdrops to be able to create the geometric shapes. You can also build rays, angles, and lines using the same kind of concept. Social studies, you can do an archaeological dig or reenactments for the bodily kinesthetic people. Okay, the next intelligence is musical. This is understanding the complexities in music and being able to create music. They enjoy using music to learn. Some examples here are composers, musicians, and dancers. For science, you could create songs for memorizing hard facts or use musical instruments when discussing sound. You can pretty much Google any science concept and put song next to it and be able to find a song pre-made, but creating the song is actually better for the students and helps them remember more. ELA, you could sing your spelling words to a familiar song, kind of like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star for younger kids or something like that. Math, you could use musical patterns when you're discussing patterns, and you can also write songs about the rules of math. And social studies, you can write a song or rap about the subject. For example, I've been working on the railroad. When teaching about the railroad, they can learn that song and then create their own lyrics to the song. Next is interpersonal, which is being able to understand other individuals' moods, desires, and motivations. These people work really good in groups. Some examples are teachers, therapists, and political and religious leaders. For science, you could do group experiments or discussions. ELA is group reading and or discussion. Math, group work to work on new concepts, or group race games such as Jeopardy. Like they could work on a game for that. And social studies, you could have a primary document group, which here's an example of a primary document, where you'd give them the primary document and then they would work on it in groups to decipher what it is and what it meant at the time. The next one is intrapersonal, which this is knowing yourself or understanding your emotions and motivations. These people like to work alone. Examples would be novelists or counselors. Some counselors use their knowledge about themselves to help others. In science, you could use it for forming a hypothesis. ELA, you could use it for exit slips or reflective journal. Math, you could use your own way to get the answer to a problem. And social studies, again, you could use the social studies journal because it's all about themselves and their own answers. And lastly is the naturalistic intelligence, which is being skilled at classifying and recognizing plants, minerals, and animals. they're usually good at recognizing and classifying artifacts, which could include cars or shoes or something like that as well. As far as science, some examples would be biologist or zoologist. As far as science goes, you could take them on a nature walk. If you're unable to go outside, bring the nature into the classroom. I just took some clippings here from right outside the door, and as you can see, it's quite easy just to take a small piece in with you. You can also bring small animals into the classroom when talking about classification of animals. ELA is using nature as a topic for teaching ELA concepts. You could teach anything, grammar or anything, using any topic you want to, so why not try to incorporate the different intelligences with it. Math, you can find shapes in nature. Even if you can't go outside, just looking around your own classroom, finding different shapes in the classroom. And then social studies, field trips, or primary documents involving pictures, which this is a primary document here of Fort Sumter. I used that in a 3rd grade class and did work quite well. Okay, well, this completes my presentation on the 8 intelligences and ways to incorporate them into your classroom. These are the resources that I used in the completion of this project. Okay. And I hope now that you have a better idea of how to incorporate these intelligences into your classroom. Thank you very much for watching.